Hey everybody, Mark Bouchard here. Welcome to the first Police Mentors live stream. Super excited to have you. We're going to be going through some things around how to become a cop. So let's start out with number one, which is just why do you want to be a cop? Like at the end of the day, policing is a hard job. So you got to really know your why. Why do you want to do this job? Why is it important to you? And I'll tell you a little bit about mine. Growing up, I watched my parents' business be broken into all the time, more times than I can count. Their vehicle would be stolen out of the parking lot of my dad's business. Anything from breaking into the neighboring business, cutting a hole through the wall. They had people actually drive right through the front of the business. They just to steal two flat screen monitors. And I wanted to do something about it. And the reason why you need to know your why is because it's going to get hard, both in trying to become a cop. There's going to be the physical challenges of, what's it like to go through training, to do physicals, to run, to do all that stuff. There's the academic challenges, but then there's once you're actually in the job as well. So it's important to be able to come back to the why you want to do this. And for me, it came down to I want to help people. That's what I heard. I helped with police recruiting at my first agency, and that's what I often heard from people who would come is they would say, "Hey, why do you want to be a cop? I want to help people." And that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that we're getting someone that wants to help people. But you need to be able to come back to why you're doing this for when things get hard. So the first big question I often get about becoming a cop is about the physicals. How hard is it? Can I do it? Different places will have different physicals, but there usually is going to be some sort of requirement. You need a certain level of fitness to be a police officer, and it should be that way. You're going to be asked to do physical things, to do hard things. Well, then you need to actually be able to do them. So, how do you train for this? Well, first off, with the different tests, you might need to train differently. If it's a beep test, if there's a run, if there's a strength component, you might need different types of training. However, we can generalize a little bit and understand first off, what's a base thing that's going to be needed? Some level of cardio, right? Some level of aerobic and even anaerobic fitness. Can you go for a run? And I'll say from my police academy, we would go for a run, right? You'd be, going on some, I don't know, 30-minute, hour-long run that, in the moment maybe seemed hard or seemed like a big deal. Now that I look back, it really wasn't that fast. It really wasn't that hard. You go at the speed that the slowest person in the group can go. Well, we had 40 people in my class. So, I was 20 young 24-year-old guy, reasonably fit. At the end of the day, it wasn't that hard. It's doable. So for that, the least fit person in the class, it's probably going to be fairly hard. But for your average police applicant, it's not too bad, especially if you've taken the time to prepare. So how do you prepare? Well, step one is get out, run, right? I mean, if you want to be good at running, the best way to do it is follow a plan for running. You kind of two main things I would recommend doing for that. One is to do some zone 2 cardio. So kind of keeping your heart rate in that like high 120s up to maybe like 140-ish. It's the area where you can still kind of speak a little bit, but also where it's a little bit challenging. So that would be where you want to keep your heart rate. And then the other thing would be doing intervals. So you're basically starting with a fairly low heart rate, and then you're doing some sort of intense activity. This can be things like cycling. This could be sprints. There's lots of ways of doing it. But yeah, then you're trying to kind of spike your heart rate. So you do a big sprint, say you sprint a lap of the track, you sprint 400 meters, 800 meters, anything like that. And then maybe you walk 400 meters and you give your heart rate a chance to come back down. And then you do another lap and you kind of cycle it back up. So that's that's one way, or sorry, two ways to really focus on improving your cardio. The next thing you're going to need to do is to improve your strength. So, you're gonna need some strength. Most of the police fitness tests I'm aware of have like a push-pull component where you have to move some weight. You have to be strong enough. And the reason is when you do the job, you also have to be strong enough. You have to be able to, control people, to get into wrestling matches, fights, to keep other people safe, to keep yourself safe. There's times you deal with violent people, dangerous people, and you're going to need that strength to help keep yourself safe, to take care of yourself, take care of others. So, what does that look like? Honestly, it's basically lifting heavy weights in a safe way. You can find plans, all kinds of different plans. Sign up for something like a CrossFit type gym, but anything that has, Olympic lifting, the one thing you want to be careful of is that you don't get injured, because if you get injured, then you can't train anymore. So sometimes you'll see with things like CrossFit, people doing deadlifts, but they're doing them wrong. And then they just damage their back. Now they can't work out. Now they can't train. So you want to slowly build up your strength, but the key is slowly in a healthy way, not just trying to throw a ton of weight on a bar and then getting yourself injured. So the next thing to talk about is the written test. And I know good police officers who have failed the written test. It's not easy. Basically, you're going to test things like language ability, writing, reading, comprehension, math skills, like how can you do some basic math. At the end of the day, it's all doable. So some of the best ways you can prepare is like read books. You can take courses, go to your local college, university, sign up for, an English course or creative writing. There's lots of different things you can do. I'm sure there's stuff you can sign up for online that could help you as well. But just the more you're using your reading and writing skills, working on your grammar, your vocabulary, your math, your numbers, all of that's going to help you. And at the end of the day, write the test, give it a try. And if you're not successful, see if you can get feedback on what areas you struggled at so that you can work on them, right? If you know that it was writing or comprehension or math or whatever part, then it gives you a chance to do something to make it better. So the next part in the process is going to be, or often would be, interviews. So that can look different. Sometimes it's a one-on-one interview. You're sitting across from somebody and they're going to be asking you questions. Sometimes it's a group interview. It's a little bit tougher when there's 3 or 4 people sitting across that interview table, asking you questions, staring at you, making notes. But it's the same thing. You're just trying to represent yourself well, make a good impression on those around you, those in front of you. And there's some things that can help you do that. So number one, you want to know what your strengths are. You want to know what you want to get across. It goes back a little bit to knowing your why. Who are you? What have you done? What do you stand for? What do you have to offer? You should have some experiences that you can draw from. Is it a sports background? Is it a university education? Was it high school? Like, what things have you done that you're proud of? You've accomplished something. Maybe you played in a team sport, an individual sport, you won an award. But you should have done some things in your life that you can draw from. And then they are going to ask you questions that often draw from your experiences. So they'll say things like, tell me about a time that you showed flexibility. Tell me about a time that you made a tough decision. Tell me about a time that you had to use your communication skills. And from there, that's you're going to demonstrate why you're a good fit, why what you've done in the past will help you to be a good fit in the future for what they're looking for. That's really what it's about. You're using those examples from your past to show that you are a good fit for what they want going forward. So you can come up with those examples ahead of time. I recommend that you write out 5 or 10 experiences that you're proud of, stories that you have, moments when you did something, you stood up to something, you made a positive change, that something that had a positive outcome, because then you can draw from those. So whether they ask you about decision making, communication, flexibility, dealing with difficult people, often that same story can incorporate many of those different aspects. So if you already have some preloaded stories that you want to use, well, now when they ask you all these different questions, you can just jump right in with one of your stories. So that's a really big strength. Instead of sitting there going, "Oh, geez, I don't know. Let me think about it." And you sit there forever, and then it's like, "Well, do you even have the life experience needed to be ready to do this job?" So go ahead, rehearse those, practice them, maybe even talk to friends, family, so that they can, they might remember some experiences you've had that you've forgotten. They might be able to remind you of some stuff that you've done that you can be proud of that will help you. Um, yeah, so show up as prepared as you can. At the end of the day, even if you're not successful with that, you can learn, you can get better, you can practice your public speaking, and it will help you. So the next one is going to be you're going to have to get through a background check. Now, that can feel uncomfortable. They're going to phone all these people and find out every bad thing you've ever done. You have your list of names you're going to submit. Just tell people, be honest. I don't have to be perfect. I am who I am. Just tell them the truth about your experiences with me, what you've seen, what you know. And if something comes up in being totally honest, you can always change your lifestyle going forward. I had that. I had to change my job. I worked with some people at the time and they did drugs, and I just was honest about it. And they said, "Well, we're not hiring you yet, and you need to get a different job if you want to be a police officer." So I said, "Okay." And I did. I went and got a more police related job, which actually was probably a good thing. It was also good to get away from people who were doing drugs. Um, but yeah, just know that the lifestyle you live matters. Integrity is crucial in policing, who you are, both on the job and off the job. If you're doing highly unethical things, you're not going to get hired as a police officer, and you shouldn't get hired as a police officer. But don't feel like you need to be a perfect person. It's okay for you to own up to admitting to some mistakes, saying what you've done wrong. But the key thing is you got to show that you've learned from it. That's what's important. What have you learned from this? Why are you not a risk to be doing it again in the future? And that stuff will come up. Many agencies will have a polygraph. They're going to test you to see, have you been honest with us? Is there something else you're not telling us? And often what's going to cause someone to fail the polygraph is that it's dishonesty. It's if somehow it comes out that you have been dishonest or that you're showing signs of dishonesty, that's where you might fail the polygraph. Whereas if you just owned up to your mistakes and said, "Yeah, I stole a chocolate bar when I was 12," or whatever this thing is, okay, yeah, we can get past that. And there's hundreds of thousands of police officers in North America, and they've all made mistakes. They've all done something in their life that they're not proud of, but they had the integrity to own up to it in their process and then, learn from it and move forward. Another question that I've had is about shooting guns. As a police officer, pretty much every agency I'm aware of is going to have some sort of shooting test and have, well, not everywhere in the world has firearms, but a lot of places, especially in North America, they do. So you're going to have to learn to shoot. And that is something that some people fail, but it is a very teachable skill. I will say at times in my career, I've struggled a bit with firearms, and ultimately I went and got a lot of firearms training, became pretty good at it. And just knowing, like a lot of things, getting good at firearms is just getting good at the fundamentals. Can you learn how to do the basics and do them well so that, you can become proficient with it? You don't have to be great at the start, but you can learn how to get better. But this comes back to that attribute of your ability to learn, because a policing career can be quite varied. You might be a school liaison officer, a homicide detective, a SWAT cop, anything in between, frontline patrol to management. And you have to adapt to those things. You have to learn what's required in those roles. And shooting's no different. If you can learn, then there's very good teachers out there that can teach you. But you have to apply that learning to your shooting skills. The next thing I would say is to just apply. If you want to be a cop, then put your name in, submit it, go online, look up what the requirements are, look up how to apply and put your name in. Because what you'll get out of that is you'll get feedback. You'll either get hired, which is what you want, or if you don't get hired, then you can ask, well, why didn't I get hired? What do I need to do to improve? And from there, you can course correct. So if you are a good applicant, but you're just not able to pass the physical, now you know. If you have did great on the physical tests, but you failed the written, now you got the thing to work on. And you really got to work on your weakness. They need well-rounded people. It doesn't matter if you scored the best on the fitness and the interview. If you can't pass the written test, it doesn't matter. And same for any of those other categories. You need a well-rounded enough background, a diverse enough background that you can do a little bit of everything as far as what they need. So the next thing to do, and it's one thing I did, is to get some police-related experience. I applied to be a police officer at 20 years old, and I was told to go get more life experience, to get more police-related experience. So I started volunteering. I volunteered for my local police department. They had something called a reserve program, which really just means they give you like 6 months of training, which was awesome. And then they give you a bunch of police gear. They give you a uniform. It does identify you as a reserve or kind of like a special constable, auxiliary constable. There's different terms for it. But it does identify you are representing the police department, but you're not a full-blown police officer. However, you still get like the body armor, the belt, all kinds of tools. We didn't get a firearm, but we did get the other intervention options. And we got the training on how to use it. So that was a really awesome experience. And then you get to go out and get police-related experience. So what that looked like for me was going out on ride-alongs. It was community events, interacting with the public. It was things as simple as traffic control. But sometimes if you're going to work frontline policing, you need to do those things. So now when you go to your police interview, you can talk about understanding a little bit more about the job and showing you've done it and you've been reliable, you showed up on time, you look professional, you met the expectations of what was being asked of you, which will help you as a police applicant when you go back to later apply. It also helped to get to deal with people. Like, sometimes you go on ride-alongs and you're under the supervision of a police officer. They'd say, hey, go talk to that person, go get their name, write it down, just different ways of interacting with people with their help and oversight. And they would teach you a bit about how they do it. And one of the cool things about that is a lot of cops do things differently. How I write a name in my notebook for easy reference might be different than some other people do. Do you write first name first or last name first or all caps this or date of birth here? So it helps to see how different people do this differently. And that's how you learn. You learn by just getting out, doing it, and learning from those already doing it, and then try and just keep getting better from there. So another thing I was told was to go get more life experience. So that was something I tried to do. For me, that actually involved moving to Europe. So I spent a year living in Denmark. I tried to learn a new language. So I already spoke English, obviously, and French. And then I started trying to learn Danish. So I spent a year learning Danish. I'm not great at it, but I did learn a little bit. I was coaching minor hockey. So again, trying to be a leader, working with people in the community, working with kids. Showing leadership. I think that does when you're coaching sports, which, there's overlap to policing. Sometimes you need to go into schools or make presentations or talk in front of a group. So I think all that helps. And then I think we can talk a bit about some of the reservations that some people have with policing. So one of them is things like shift work and night shifts. How do you fit that into your life? How does that fit in with your family? Call outs, overtime. Those can be challenging things. Night shifts are hard. It's hard to stay up all night, and not only you're up all night, but sometimes the shift continues when you hope to be off at 6 or 7 or 5 in the morning, but you're actually going to be off at, noon. You got to stick around 5 or 6 hours extra. So trying to learn as much as you can about sleep science. I wrote a book here, Setting My Sights on Stigma, Thoughts from an Injured Mind. I have a chapter all about sleep science, because I wish someone had taught that to me when I was a new police officer, and really we didn't learn much about it back then, but that science has really kept evolving. So just trying to share what I needed, and hopefully it'll help you. The other reservation, some people ask, I've talked to even police recruits and even current police officers about PTSD and trauma and basically being injured psychologically, mentally, from the experiences that we have from some of the death and destruction, sadness. Um, and there can be some reality to that. We're going to see some trauma in policing. However, back to my book, that's why I have a chapter on finding post-traumatic growth, because we can go through hardship, but we can actually come out better on the other side, right? I wouldn't wish the trauma or the hardship on people, but often it forces us to change and grow, and we can actually become stronger in some ways and better, maybe have more empathy for others, more connection with others. So yes, there can be some trauma. There can be symptoms of PTSD, even a PTSD diagnosis. Personally, I have had that. And I do still have some symptoms in my life. I've lived with nightmares and rage and some of the stuff that even the alcoholism that can come, but I've worked through a lot of it and I'm still working through the other parts. I'm not going to stay and be a victim to a PTSD diagnosis. Instead, I'm going to, I talk to a psychologist and I am proactive in my health. I don't really drink much anymore and just trying to control the parts I can. At the end of the day, policing does have its challenges. It has, night shifts and trauma and some hardship. But if we choose a healthy coping, we can still come out generally pretty well on the other side.